Hank Davenport by Beatties. I served in 1962 to 64 in Peru. It was a wonderful experience. It was a life-changing experience. I lived in a small indigenous town between the cities of Cusco and the ancient city of Machu Picchu. And when I did a 360, there was just snow-capped mountains all the way around. I lived at about 13,000 feet. I was the healthiest I've ever been in my life. Several things happened to me that were kind of curious, but I'll share with you one of those. And that is that one of my jobs was to check on different schools throughout the area to make sure that foodstuffs that this country had donated to Peru were being used well in concert with the Peruvian program, a school feeding program. And so I would go on a horse. I had 2 horses, by the way. And the reason I had 2 horses is because the growth of the horses was stunted. And so I would ride one of the horses one day, and it was so exhausted from carrying me around, I had to go to the other horse the next day. And one of my horses, by the way, was the slowest horse in the area, so I called it Relampago, which means lightning. People thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, I would go on my horse, and I would travel around the perimeter of a plain, a pampa. It's called a pampa. It's Pampa de Anta. And it was maybe 4 kilometers long and about 2 kilometers wide. And there was different towns on the perimeter of this plain. And what I would do is I would check in with my co-workers at different schools to make sure things are okay. And by the time I went around about 3/4 of the way around the perimeter of this plain, people already knew that I was coming. And I didn't understand this because at that time, in 1962, 63, there wasn't any electricity. They didn't use smoke signals like Native Americans did here in this country. So I didn't know how they knew that I was coming and when because I would vary my schedule, etc. And so I finally got curious about that. And I decided to ask. And so I made my last stop, one of my turns around the plain. I asked them, I said, well, how do you guys know that I'm coming? And they would say, well, all we had to do was look for the horse with 6 legs. Because I was so tall, I'm 6'2", and the horses were so small that I would essentially be dragging my feet as I rode these horses. And that's how they knew I was coming. They would just look across the plain because the air is pristine clear there. And they'd be able to see 2 or 3 kilometers away, there's this guy coming on a horse with 6 legs. Must be the gringo. And so that's one of my stories that I have to tell you of a delightful time that I had in my life. I entered the Peace Corps, mechanical engineering. I got out of the Peace Corps, social psychology. So it was a life-changing experience, and I still live those Peace Corps days in my current life. Thank you.
My name is John Owen. I live in Portland, Oregon. I served in Peru, in Chimbote, in 1962 to 1964.
John O'Brien. I served in the Peace Corps twice on a leave from architectural school, 62 to 64. After the earthquake in 70, the Peace Corps invited us back if we had construction experience or health. I went back to the northern coast of Peru. In the first 2 years, I worked in Chimbote and Chancay, which was really good. The second time, we worked around Cosma. With Bob Tagenhorst, we did, say, a dozen schools with anti-seismic design. You just take some simple angle irons that you make a bookcase out of, and instead we made a school out of it. We put them in about 7 rural villages after the earthquake. And 40 years later, the schools are still there. We went back and visited, and now we've started a non-for-profit, Partners for Communal Development, and we're helping the schools out. We're setting ourselves up to help them out and get foundation money. And we're also working with an architect in Lima to do some work there.
My Peace Corps name was Sandra Good. It's now Sandy del Prado. I was in Cusco, near Cusco, Calca, Peru, 1962 to 64.
My name is Ralph Bolton, and I served in Peru from 1962 to 65, and now run a foundation working in the same communities that I worked in those years. It's called the Chignaya Foundation.
I'm Louisa Baldinger. I was in Peru from 1963 to 1966. In community development in Arequipa, Peru. And worked mostly with children. We established a local library and brought books in Spanish down from the States and tried to get the kids to understand the concept of borrowing and returning. We did a lot of walking through the barriadas trying to get the books back. Finally, we moved the library into a school, and the kids came to the library after school, and they could read books there at the school, and that was the way we were able to maintain sort of our collection of books. And that was wonderful. I also taught art in the local schools. We did a great big paper mache project with newspapers and paper mache paste that I made with flour and water, and cooked it and took it up to the school in a big bucket and had a great time. And we also worked, of course, with birth control till we were put underground by the local Catholic Church. But that was very interesting. It was was recently married there, and after several months, some women came and asked why I was not pregnant yet, and so I told them, and they wanted to have the same thing happen to them. I had an IUD placed, and so we set up a program whereby a Peruvian doctor was getting IUDs from the U.S., I think from Planned Parenthood. And we were able to place IUDs in a few of the women, but then the church got a hold of us and we had to stop. So that was the extent of my experience. It was mostly community development and mostly just hanging out in the neighborhoods and being good people. We loved it. Thank you.
I'm Thompson. I was in Peru from 1964 to 1966, and I was in rural community action, and I worked in 4-H groups and women's embroidery tapestry groups.
Wayne Thompson. I was in the Peace Corps Peru 1964 to 66, rural community action. I went in as an orchardist, ended up above Cusco about 10,000 feet, no orchards at that level. So I had to find another job. And at that time it was easy to get money from Alliance for Progress. I was able to build several schools in a couple of little villages above Calca, Peru.
Fantastic.
I'm Larry DeRolf, and I was in Peru back in 64 to 66. And I was in the town called Chiquito in the Altiplano near Lake Titicaca.
Robert Schlack, and I was with Peace Corps in 64, 66. I was in Peru. And one thing I remember particularly was I was dropped off at the end of the road once. They drove me out to a little town outside of the provincial capital, about an hour away, and said, "Here you are, here's your assignment." So I figured that my time would be better spent in the provincial capital, so I ended up at the teachers training college, teaching English, mathematics, and things like that. And a good experience, a wonderful time.
Hi, my name is Charlotte. I taught in Peru. I was there from 63 to 65. I was in Peace Corps training at Cornell University when President Kennedy was assassinated. They were talking about shutting the program down, and we said, no, we will go. So I went. I met my husband in Peace Corps in Cajamarca, Peru. I remember the Peruvians asking me if I had known President Kennedy, if I had gone to his funeral. We had to explain to them that no, we were a very large country. At the Marino Brothers Teaching College where I taught, I did get to serve the president of Peru, Belaunde, a glass of champagne. He had gone to the University of Texas, so we spoke English. Over the years, having been in the Peace Corps has helped me be a better teacher. It helps me understand other cultures and the cultures of my students who I still teach. It's inspirational to remember what I did as a youngster, and hopefully I can do some more when I retire.
Great, thanks.